So what are the building blocks of carbohydrates? The answer, monosaccharides. Mono means one and saccharide means sugar molecule. Monosaccharides are the most basic unit of all carbohydrates. These simple sugars can combine to form more complex carbohydrates. For example, sucrose, that regular table sugar we're all familiar with, is a disaccharide, which means it's made up of two sugar molecules bonded together. In this case, one of glucose and another one of fructose. In this video, we're going to explore arguably the most relevant monosaccharides in biology: glucose, galactose, and fructose. And make sure to stay until the end. There's a few dark truths about fructose you might want to hear. Glucose is by far the most important monosaccharide, and what makes it special, among many things, is that it's the preferred energy source for our bodies. Whenever we eat, the body works very hard to break down our food into glucose so that it can then be transformed into energy. And if our body doesn't need that energy right away, it stores this glucose as fat for later. Too much glucose in our blood is bad, and too little glucose is bad too. So our blood glucose levels, also known as blood sugar levels, must be carefully regulated by our bodies. There's actually about 4 grams of glucose circulating in the blood of the average adult at any given time. If those levels drop too low, our bodies release glucagon, a hormone that triggers different processes to make more glucose, ensuring we always have enough fuel. On the other hand, if glucose levels get too high, our body releases insulin to help bring them back down. Consistently high glucose levels can lead to serious health complications, including heart attacks and strokes. This is exactly why it's important to keep our blood sugar in check with a healthy diet. Now, on that note, if you love to add sweetness to your drinks and foods, but don't want the negative consequences of consuming too much sugar, please consider giving our monk fruit extracts a try. They're zero glycemic and 100% natural. Over 6,000 people buy them every single month. We have sold over 40,000 units. And by the way, this is the reason I'm able to make these videos. So click the link in the description below to get 10% off your first order on our online store. And you can also find us on Amazon and Walmart.com. Just search for Transparency Foods monk fruit. All right, let's go back to the video. Let's now talk about another very important monosaccharide called galactose. Every time we drink milk, we consume this fascinating sugar, and it's one of the critical building blocks of life itself. When galactose is combined with glucose, it forms lactose, the primary sugar found in milk that provides a whopping 40% of calories for infants. But the importance of galactose doesn't end there. It is essential for creating complex molecules that help our cells communicate with each other and maintain their structure. What's even more fascinating is that galactose is so important that if we don't consume it, the body will produce it on its own by transforming glucose into galactose. I personally think that's pretty amazing. And something similar happens with glucose. If we consumed no carbohydrates whatsoever, the body will still be able to survive by transforming the protein and fat we consume into glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. However, this is not the case for the third and final monosaccharide on the list. Fructose is a monosaccharide found in fruits, honey, and many processed foods like sodas and sauces. Structurally, it's very similar to glucose, but is treated quite differently by our bodies. Fructose is absorbed in the small intestine and transported to the liver, where it's metabolized. Because fructose can be easily converted into fatty acids, excessive fructose consumption may lead to accumulation of fat in the liver and increase the risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And to make things worse, fructose is actually pretty sweet. It's 1.2 to 1.8 times sweeter than sucrose, making it one of the sweetest naturally occurring sugars. And this is exactly why it's used to make high fructose corn syrup, a common sweetener that the US is consuming like crazy. In fact, the consumption has gone up by a shocking 2,100% since the 1900s. And on top of that, fructose consumption doesn't trigger insulin or leptin, leptin being the hormone that tells our brain that we're full. And without that signal, we might keep eating even when we don't need more food, and over time, this lack of control can lead to overeating and weight gain. Of course, moderation is important for anything, regardless of what we consume, but I think it's important to point out that out of these 3 monosaccharides, only fructose it's not really necessary to survive or to live a healthy life. If we stop consuming fructose, like if we dropped fructose consumption down to 0, our body will not need it. It will not produce it on its own. Like, we will just be able to live just fine. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.